Live on another episode of our pre-symposium panel. This is the preamble and the warm-up as we work towards our executive symposium next week, December 7th, 5 to 8 p.m. If you are a leader, if you're someone who's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you're interested in meeting fellow executives and connecting with other leaders to talk about the topic, how to find new ways to grow, I'd highly encourage you come to the upcoming executive symposium. Today in our pre-symposium panel, we're going to talk about the topic, how to find new ways to grow. We've got great panelists with us today. My name is Garrett Mintz. I am the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they are there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with leaders, because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams. One of the ways we build that community through Executive Symposium. So if you're watching this today and you're like, man, I'd love to meet these three great leaders, come to the Executive Symposium. I'll put the RSVP link in the comments area of this video. But my fellow panelists, would you all be open to introducing yourselves for our audience today? Ken, do you mind going first?
Sure, I would love to here. First of all, Garrett, thanks for allowing us the opportunity to come and visit with you for a little bit this morning. But again, my name is Ken Barge. I'm partner and founder of eGrab Services, where we simplify HR for many small to mid-sized businesses. Our focus primarily is facilitation, coaching, and training. Our goal is really to focus on helping our clients create a better work environment for their employees through increasing productivity, better training, as well as cost efficiencies as well too. So I'm excited to come and get to know Jason and Marina a little bit more, as well as you, Garrett, and also talk a little bit about leadership.
Very nice. Marina, how about yourself?
I'm Marina Williams. I'm the CEO at Texas Health Surgery Center, which is part of SCA Health, our ambulatory care facility, and look forward to this discussion.
Very nice. And then Jason, how about yourself?
Hey, Garrett, thanks for having us. My name is Jason Dumois, and I am Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at ELB Learning. So what we do, we're a learning solutions company. We help build training from in-person classroom, virtually led through, webinars or through, web conferencing tools like Zoom and self-paced e-learning. So we have a myriad of solutions and products as well, learning products. So that's what we do, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Very nice. Very nice. No, I also realized I forgot to click the record button on my own side. So we do internal recording as well. So when y'all have great snippets and great sound bites, we will post that in our social media and all that sort of fun stuff. So we are not officially recorded on my local machine. So topic for today, how to find new ways to grow. And so when I say how to find new ways to grow, I'm talking a little bit about how do we identify new business opportunities. We're in a very interesting economic time period right now. A lot of companies are shifting. A lot of companies are making pivots, iterations. And when we do that, one, what's the process we go through for identifying what is the best way to pivot? I mean, shoot, if we're an ice cream company and we say, hey, we could go and make potato launchers, we absolutely could go make potato launchers, but is that the best utility of our time, resources, and I guess opportunities of scale? Vice versa, when it also comes to change and making pivots, we also have to get our team to buy into that. That's another difficult element within that as well, because we know not everybody is the most apt to making changes in the way that they work. What made them successful in the past, oftentimes is easy to assume will make them successful in the future. And that oftentimes isn't the case. And so we have to be able to adapt. And how do we go about getting people excited about adapting is something I'm very curious to learn. So the first question I have for you all today is, how do you go about identifying opportunities for growth? But then also, once you get when you identify those inklings for growth, how do you go about communicating it to the team? Really, do you do a wide scale saying, hey, we're going to make this pivot, or do you go at an iterative approach and maybe have like a special ops team that you can say, hey, I want to test out this idea. We're going to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we're going to, we're going to try something different, but not get everybody excited about it. And then if it doesn't work, it's really hard to backtrack. How do you go about the change process? How do you go about like identifying new ways to pivot? And do you have any examples of when you've made pivots, what worked, what didn't work?
I think I'll go ahead and start off with that here, is that in HR, human resources, things have changed over the course of the year, especially during COVID. One of the key things I'll use, for example, was recruiting. One of the things that really made us successful, back in 2000, we started the company in 2015, but in 2016, 17, and 18 was the recruiting component. Realistically, it was somewhat easy to recruit for individuals. When COVID occurred, that began to change. And now, as you all know, it is very challenging to recruit individuals. One of the key components, what we have, and one of the things that we believe in our firm is, one is understanding people's stories. What I mean by that is that, our focus is that if I help you get better, then you will help us get better. And so my focus is really understanding people's stories. So when I focus initially, when I look at what we need to do, everyone needs employees, but everyone's having a hard time finding employees. So what do we need to do, and what do we need to change? And I think understanding your story, why are you doing what you're doing? It gets back to, why are we here? And so once I get a better understanding of that, then I can begin to understand more about how we can better suit and how we can better find people for your business. And it's taken a lot more time than what it has in the past. And so how I've gotten my team to buy into it is that I've had to understand their stories. One of the challenge, I'll give you a quick example here, is that back in, I think it was 2008 or 2009 or something like that, I was going for a management role. I didn't get it. And so I ultimately did what every smart executive would do. I left the company because I didn't get what I wanted. So I wasn't ready at the time. And so I didn't understand myself. And I think that was one of the key components here. What I've had to learn over the course of the past couple of years is really understanding myself so I can understand others, so I can go out and help others improve on their needs. So, but I think it all depends on really focusing on the individual, and understanding others is what's important.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I've got some follow-up questions to that. But Marina and Jason, I want to learn from you first. What have you found to be an effective way to pivot? How do you get your team to buy into some of those changes? How do you go about the iteration or the pivoting or just the innovation process in general?
Well, I'll piggyback to his story, since we're dipping into HR world of things. I'm glad you brought this up, because one of the strategies that we had to pivot drastically as part of all of us struggling with labor and where to find talent, our strategies have pivoted drastically. In my previous organization, before I joined this one, we actually had to go to campuses and start recruiting straight off campus, giving out offers right on the spot, having interviews with candidates. We don't even know if they're going to be good employees, but we had to trust the process and really understand that that's the way to capture talent. And getting buy-in was hard, buy-in from both sides. Recruits, they're looking at your organization. They also don't know you yet. They also don't know yet if they even will be good at what they're studying to do. On the flip side, the buy-in from the teams to see the big picture, that we're bringing in someone that they will have to train really from ground up, is a challenge on its own. But we achieved a lot of success in that story. This was one of the creative ways to really cross that bridge of need and lack of supply. And I think it was one of the great examples of how we had to really look differently. How do we approach our talent? How do we find the talent? And how do we as an organization approach all the training that now had to be put in place? So lots and lots of steps in the process was put in place, but it was a success story. We really enjoyed the process. There were hiccups as usual in anything new, but lots and lots of buy-in from all sides of the table.
That's also fascinating. I've got follow-up questions to that as well. But Jason, dive in. What have you found to be the best process for you for like pivoting, iterating, getting team buy-in when going towards new innovations? What have you found to be interesting observations in that process?
This is a great question, Garrett. So similar to Marina and Kenneth here, what I've worked in a 100% remote environment for 15 years. Okay. So, when the pandemic has, came about, it was business as usual for someone like me. So, so the interesting thing is when it comes to like recruiting, if we're talking about HR and recruiting, there was really nothing new. However, the interesting thing here was folks were, who were used to working in the office, wanted to go remote, right? So, that's normal for me. So at the end of the day here, I really found that that pivot, right, from going in person to remote was great. Now, were there challenges with that? Yeah. And guess what? I'm in the training industry. Okay. So it was right up our road when it came to, okay, what do we do to help grow our teams and, making sure everybody's trained, on new hire onboarding. And, that's just something that, my company now where I'm at and, the companies I was with before, we did really well. So as far as getting buy-in from my team, there really wasn't a lot of buy-in, to be honest with you, since it was, what we had been doing, for years. I would say when it comes to recruiting though, a lot of people during the pandemic were looking, for high salaries, right? So it was really hard to compete just with salaries. But outside of that, just, having that training, again, having a good training program is really something that, really set us apart from the crowd. So.
Well, you all three of you give me a lot of fascinating points to think about, but I'm going to start with Marina's because I'm very genuinely curious, and I think there's a lot of applicability here of just the pivoting the way that you went about recruiting new people. So one of the things you mentioned was, and I'm paraphrasing, but selling the people, or sorry, selling the new prospective team members on the company, because you're now recruiting straight out of college, straight from, these fresh-faced recruits. At the same time, selling the current team members on hiring these new team members, I would imagine is really stressful. I would imagine you've got, I would imagine maybe an older school mentality would have been like, you should be grateful to have a job. Like, we're paying you your salary. You should just be happy that you are getting money. You should have a smile on your face. And no matter what kind of hours you have to work or what kind of things that you have to put up with, because in healthcare, I recognize there are some inherently very stressful things you have to deal with, especially if you're, let's say, a nurse or you're a doctor, you're going through a lot of things. But the point I'm getting at is that now you're saying, hey, we've got to think about more creative ways to recruit these new talented people to come into our organization. At the same time, you've got probably your team members that are saying like, who are these new people? They don't know squat. I got to do all this training. I didn't used to have to do this training. People came in with this knowledge and now I got to go baby steps with them. Oh, geez. And I would imagine maybe some people even quit thinking like, oh, I'm going to go to greener pastures elsewhere where I can only work with the super most competent, colleagues in the world. I don't have to train anybody and I can sit in my silo, do my work, go home and have some fun. How was that getting that buy-in? What was that process like?
Lots and lots of conversations with different subgroups of the team, because as you pointed out, there's different generational approaches to the process. And you have to be mindful in your approach on how do you get buy-in from all of those different subgroups within your team environment. I have to say our education team at that time was outstanding. The leader in that department had amazing program in mind, and they really leaned in investing time and effort, not just monetary, carrot, for those who had to put a little bit more work in training newbies, but also creating atmosphere of seeing the big picture and really looking through the process and really re-educating and re-envisioning what the future looks like if we don't go through all of these steps. But it is a different conversation. It's a different conversation when you have different subgroups of your labor force at the table, because for some it will be natural and they want to teach, and for others it will be additional something to do and they don't want to do it. And those are two different conversations, and how you approach them and how do you drive that interest and how do you get from here to there. It was initial thought it was going to be super easy to accomplish. As a process, it was a lot of politics and conversations.
I would imagine that. And I guess what I'm curious, just for a clarifying point, how big was the team when you were going through that? Because I would imagine there's a lot of one-on-one conversations. Like I know, like you may think I'll speak to the group and everyone will get it, but everybody likes to feel they have the FaceTime, the one-on-one time to answer. How many people are we talking about?
We're talking about different facilities have different leaderships and different subgroups. So at that time, I was in charge of several facilities, and it was a different conversation with different leaders at the table. So to add complexity to that, you had to also think through the different dynamics of each team that you had to approach. And each facility ranged anywhere from 12 to 15 people to some of them almost 50 to 60. So it's different approach based on size of the group, demographics of the group. But in the end of the day, we're all in the same battle for the same talent. And so the mission was there. The mission was clear. It's how do we get a buy-in?
Then, Jason, I'd be curious to know, have you ever been through a pivot kind of like what Marina's describing? Because I'm envisioning, Marina, when you first were thinking about going through this educational process or that training process of getting everybody up to snuff and just everybody educated about this new system that you're implementing, I would imagine maybe at first you're like, do we really need this added expense? It's going to take a lot of time. We haven't historically done this before. Do we really need it? And now in hindsight, you're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we did this. We absolutely needed it. I'd be curious to know, Ken and Jason, have you ever been through a process like that? How did you determine what was the right way to pivot? What was a pivot you made, but you're like, I backtrack on that? Or have you ever had a scenario like that?
Well, I will. Let me just. I'll start here, Jason, and you can jump in here if you like.
Sure, go ahead.
One of the key things that we have to do is basically as consultants is that I had to get the leaders to buy in. I think Marina, you mentioned it. You mentioned it correctly. I had to redirect, or we still have to redirect leaders to why we're here. Back to the organization mission, vision, and values. This is why we are here, and we have to change. People don't like to change. I mean, it's that Who Moved My Cheese was a book that was very successful for a reason, but people don't necessarily like to change. And so we've had to understand and help leaders understand that, hey, this is why we're here. And so we're having to do something different. But again, some of the roles that we actually source for, some of them may be high level roles and others may be, not as high level roles. And specifically in those roles, maybe some of those entry level roles or, blue and gray collar roles, that perception of you're lucky to have a job. You are lucky to be here. I had to get to my clients specifically, say, hey, we got to change that attitude. If not, we're going to be behind, very well behind. And many of them had to. That's why I went to that understanding people's stories, helping others get better. Once we help others get better, then we can get better. And I learned years ago, and I've been blessed to work with many different business owners over my career. And I learned years ago at a company over in Fort Worth, Texas, that I asked this gentleman, I said, why did they paid, I think it was they were near TCU, and they paid a good amount of money towards their education expense for their employees. And I asked, well, do they made like little plastic widgets or what have you. And I said, well, they have to go into some type of manufacturing, or I said, this is really pretty neat. They said, no, you don't have to do anything. As long as they come here and help us get better, we'll take care of them. They can study history. They can study whatever they want to study. And as long as they do what we are doing and helping us get better, then we're going to support them. And I never forgot that. And, and today we're trying to hopefully help, implement our company in that regard and also help companies understand that as well. But it was really just changing that mindset change for the leaders. Once you get the leaders to understand that, and then a true leader begins to look out for others, then at that point in time, we can begin to making some of those pivots, like Marina was saying. But initially, it all starts off with that change component. So, Jason, what are your thoughts?
Oh no, that was wonderful, Kenneth. Thank you for sharing your story. So I guess with me, I would have to say that so I'm in a relatively new position. So I'm at ELB Learning, and I've only been here for about seven months now, coming on 7 months. So what I've learned here at our organization is great, but we've actually had to go through a lot of pivoting because of acquisitions. So our company has acquired like 6 different companies in the last 3 years. So when you're getting into mergers and acquisitions, there's a lot of change.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
you're changing constantly, right? So with that said, I wasn't part of those acquisitions, so I can't personally talk to that, but I can tell you based on talking to my leaders or CEO and what they've shared. So I'm happy to talk about it in that perspective. So it's just been challenging, right? So you have the parent company, you have this company, that company, they have their email addresses and like they're doing their processes. How the heck do you change so it's all uniform, it's one umbrella, it's one mission, all the same values? And from what I've heard from our leadership team, it was challenging, and it took a couple years, and now things are great. And do people want to continue doing what they were doing? Yeah, it was comfortable, but then you have to change. At the end of the day, you gotta pivot. That's that key word we talk about here, pivoting. And it's at the end of the day, it's and me coming in on the end of those acquisitions, right? So I think the last acquisition was last summer, so in 22. So I've seen where the cohesiveness that is been brought together with these companies. So it's again challenging, but it's everybody's come together and embraced it, and it's a great been a great experience. And I have other like personal experiences I could talk to, but I'll just leave it at that. So
Jason, I want to follow up on that because I'm genuinely intrigued. One thing I often see in a lot of organizations is they don't really do a great job of showcasing all of the like failed pivots they've made in the process. So sometimes what I'll hear is you'll have a team member come and be like, "Oh, I've been thinking a lot about this. I think it would be awesome if we went with this idea." And they'll say, "No, we tried it 5 years ago. Won't work. This is why it won't work, blah, 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 blah." And you're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Great." And so I guess what I'm trying to ask is what has your company's education process been around, like, because I'm with a lot of mergers and acquisitions, a lot of pivoting going on. Not every idea is great, and no one wants to hear the Bill Gates, if I try hard I'll just become a billionaire story. We want to hear the failures, we want to learn the mistakes he made getting there, because we can learn from them. So what is your company, because I know you're relatively new,
right.
is there a process for your company to like educate you, like saying, hey, we tried this, didn't work, but we tried this, it did work, and then go from there?
So from what I know over the few months that I've been at the organization, I will tell you that yes, there are a lot of things that folks have learned as far as our process and our educational process. I mean, we have we are a training company, right? So that's what we do best. We create better learning experiences. That's our slogan, right? So we got to per se eat our own dog food, right? So we have a robust training program for all new hires, and then bringing all these companies together, we had to paint that vision for them to come together as one. So yeah, but as far as me personally, I mean, I could give you another example outside of where I've been now, because again, like I said, I wasn't really part of those last several years. So I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I've run several companies. I ran an e-learning company. I ran an HR tech company for several years. I was the founder and CEO. And, we keep on talking about pivoting here. So I had to make a tough decision in like 2018 to like what to do next, right? It was a startup company, and we were slowly getting it off the ground, but it was really tough. So I had to say, okay, look, what are we going to do here? Are we going to lay off folks? Or are we going to close the doors down, right? So it was, at the end of the day, it was a tough decision, but I had to at that point, close the doors down just because it was a startup company, right? It was a new company. So it was hard. It was hard to let some of my folks go. But yeah, I mean, if you have any other follow-up questions, happy to answer.
I
So.
do. And I appreciate your vulnerability and appreciate you sharing. But yeah. I want to jump to Ken real quick. Ken, one thing you talked about early on was active listening and understanding people's stories. And I really love that you shared that. But one thing that you shared was that in 2008, you didn't get a promotion that you wanted to get. Yeah. And so you left the company. And so one thing you shared was that some people don't understand themselves. So how do you go about that active listening process for, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if someone would have sat you down and listened to your story in 2008, you would have said, oh, this company doesn't respect me. They don't care about me. I'm leaving for greener pastures. I'm getting out of here. What could have somebody said to you in that moment to get you to stay or maybe see a different side of things? Or could someone have said anything? I don't know. I'd be curious.
At the time, possibly at the time, my ego was so big that probably not. So I was, and I'm just being old. I'm being upfront honest at the time. I thought I was it, and so. But I would say this here is that I've learned, I think through our challenges, and actually the good thing about that is actually when I did make a move, I thought I went to an organization that I thought was going to be beneficial, and it turned out that it wasn't. They gave me everything that I thought I wanted, but it wasn't what I needed. And so ultimately, I think it was understanding, trying to get to know that individual. And I'm going to get a little bit, I'm an HR guy here by heart here. So one of the things that I understand is that people have three basic needs: love, security, significance, or appreciation, security, significance. And so and that's an intrinsic need that people have that they're given with, whether it is work environment or personal environment. So if I have those basic needs and then people are looking out for me and just want to understand, Ken, what is it that drives you? What is it that's that one thing that you can do that would just drive you and make you want to go? And then I think I didn't ask myself those questions because I was more focused on making money instead of understanding what I really wanted to do. And I think as a leader now, what I do is when I see someone and I see them going down that road, I want to ask them, what is it that you want to do? You ask them those big, grandiose questions because, again, if I'm understanding that individual, many times people feel like, oh, no one hears me. No one cares about what I do. I'm just going to do whatever I need to do to make as much money as possible. But when I get to understand what is it that you really want to do, I had a story with a gentleman where he was a truck driver for a client. He was a delivery driver, and he wanted to be a diesel mechanic. And he didn't think he could do it. And I just thought, well, why can't you do it? He goes, I never finished high school. I said, okay, well, next story. Why can't you do it? One of the things that I learned at an early age, don't let anything stop you from being successful. And I learned that from my dad. And I said, well, okay, that's an issue, but what can we do to go forward here? And so I think that's the key thing. I think it's, as a leader, you need to sit down with your team and get to know your team, build trust with your team. Once you do that, you can begin to understand their story, but understand their motivators and understand them on how they can get better, which in turn is going to help them be more susceptible to help the organization get better. Because it's not about Ken coming in and making a sale or Ken coming in and finishing a project. It's about Ken accomplishing what Ken's mission or personal goal is. Once I can get and understand that within my team, then at that point in time, I get people who are purpose-driven as opposed to reward-driven.
That's awesome. Ken, you shared a few good things on this that I really, really liked. But I want to come to Marina because we kind of touched on this before. How do you overcome healthy egos in people? When you've got team members with a real healthy ego.
You fire them. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I didn't say. Scrape that one off. Take that one off here. Take that off. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. It's good. But Marina, because we kind of talked about this before, when we have, new team members coming in, maybe less educated, less experienced, I would imagine you've got some team members with some pretty well-fed egos that are saying, hey, I don't want to do this. This is below my pay grade, or this is, I'm well above this. How do you help team members overcome egos?
Great question. I do think I would agree with Ken, is really trying to understand what drives that. There's always that internal driver, right? So it can be a challenge, but in the end of the day, all of us as individuals are driven by the why, the internal why. And if we as leaders can identify that why, then we can pivot their behavior in the positive direction. And I truly believe that big egos are based on their internal understanding and their big driven why. And if you understand what it is, then you can partner with someone and repurpose their energy in a positive direction. And that becomes amazing synergy that you can accomplish amazing results. Will it 100% be possible? Probably not. Sometimes it's just what it is. But really trying to partner to accomplish that common goal, then you can apply that big energy towards common goals, and it's a success story. And engaging your team as a team environment as well. You cannot change it yourself. So if your team is not part of the process, you will not change anything by yourself. Mission impossible.
I'm glad that you're bringing this up, Marina, because this is within the realm of ego. There's overt ego, and then there's covert ego. When I say covert ego, I mean, I'm a firm believer that objectivity diminishes the higher you go in any organizational hierarchy, meaning that the person at the top, people are going to be like, yeah, you're amazing to your face. But when they're with their own team, with you not there, do they follow what we discussed? Are they on board with everything that they said? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so when I say covert ego, they'll tell you to your face, oh yeah, I support it. I'm totally fine with changing the way that I operate or do my business or whatever. And they go back to the team, they're like, we're not changing a thing. Keep going to doing the thing that we've always been doing. We're not changing anything. How do you combat the covert ego, the people that tell you to your face that everything you want to hear, but when you look at the results, you're like, what the heck is going on here? I thought we discussed this 10 times. How do you overcome that? This is an open-ended question for anybody.
Let me just highlight one thing here, because I sometimes speak off the cuff and I say certain things when I said that, hey, you terminate people with ego. Let me kind of highlight one thing I wanted to highlight. I look at confidence and ego in two separate ways. I want someone who's confident. I want someone who says that, you know what? One of the things that I say is that no one does what we do. And I really believe that. Now, it's not an ego thing. I don't try to belittle or anything like that. When I talk about ego, when I think about ego, is that person that will just crumble and just try to take apart everybody regardless of the outcome. That's an ego. I will do whatever it takes for me to succeed, and I don't care what I do to other people. That's what I mean by that here. But the ultimate component of when you say about covert ego, I think that that's when you have to basically, you get everyone on that commitment side. Once you have everyone committed to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, then you have to have where how do we hold people accountable? How do we measure individuals? And I think sometimes we don't understand how we need to effectively measure. In HR, you say, okay, I'm going to be your HR consultant. How do we measure your success? Okay, well, is it turnover? Is it cost of it? Is it cost of employment cost? Is it benefit cost? Is it, whatever that might be, reducing your onboarding cost? So how do we measure that? But in any aspect, how do you measure that component? And if someone says that, hey, this is what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do, and then they don't change, then at that point in time, you give them all the tools to be successful. I'm a big believer in that. One of the things as leaders is that sometimes we'll say, okay, I need you to go sell, but I don't give you any insight in regards to what you're doing. Give people the tools to be successful. Give them all the things they need. Once they have what they need, and once you give them the tools, and once you give them clear communication, if they don't do it, that's on them, and then they need to be the ones that have to ultimately change. You have to put people in position to be successful. Once I've done that as a leader, then at that point, they make the decision as to which way they want to go. So I don't want people to think that I like to go around firing people. That's not the case. I just wanted to clarify that.
No, but within that, Ken and Jason, I'm going to direct this question to you. What happens? What do you do when you've got a scenario where you've got a team member that has a healthy ego? You know they're being a jerk. You know they're kind of bringing other people down, but you're thinking to yourself, gosh, the pain of letting this person go and having to retrain, rehire, re-interview, that rigmarole. I don't want to go through it. So you put up with it. You're like, I'm just going to put up with this person because I don't want to go through the pain. Like, how do you go about assessing, is it worth to stick through it and see if they're willing to change versus they're unwilling to change and I am willing to take on the burden of replacing them? How do you go about identifying or I guess going through that process?
That's a great question, Garrett. So for me, I'm a big believer in, I like to say leading with gratitude, right? Leading with kindness. There's been books written about it. One of my advisors, Chester Elton, he wrote the book Leading with Gratitude. Great book. So when this scenario, let's say you got this guy or gal, they got this big ego. It's just like they think, nothing's gonna get by them. They own everything. So look, what I would do if I'm their boss and I'm leading that person is, talk to them, right? Talk to them, give them the whole, give them a chance, right? Like if we're talking about sales, for example, and they're a top producer, that's like a big, for a VP of sales, chief revenue officer, you don't want to let your top people go, right? Just because they have a big ego. And a lot of salespeople do have egos. That's a fact. But it's just, I'm the type where like, look, see if you can coach them, right? That's where coaching and leadership development comes in place. And if you can do that, they can change. I believe people can change, right? Like, give them a chance. And then at the end, if they're still pulling the team down, it's just creating a toxic culture and environment for everybody else. As much as they're a top producer, it's not worth it. And again, and then to Kenneth's point, eventually, right, you'll want to, with fair warning and all that, you might have to let them go, right? And I would be the type where I'm all about culture, people over profit. Yes, I'm in business and running my own business. You got to make money, but you got to put your people and your team and your culture first, over, people who have these egos and they're just being not nice to other people. So I don't tolerate that. So that's how I would approach it.
So Marina, Ken, I saw you nodding your head there when Jason was talking about leading with gratitude. I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I was wondering if y'all would indulge role playing with me, what that conversation could look like. So let's imagine I'm the jerk employee and you're my boss and you're observing that I'm exuding egotistical and jerk-like behavior. Does anybody want to do a practice role play as to what a really effective one-to-one looks like with me that gets me to observe that, one, become self-aware that I'm being a jerk, and two, just because I'm a great salesperson or a great whatever department I'm in doesn't mean that I'm above the team itself. Does anybody want to role play? Give it a try.
I'll give
us on the hot spot.
Marina,
right?
Marina, you want to give it a shot, or you want? I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I feel like you're the subject matter expert on this.
You're the HR guy, Kenneth. So.
I know.
All right. Let's see.
I just like role playing because I like to see it. I mean, people are watching this, and
no, that's good.
We're talking about it. Let's give
good.
an example of what it looks like.
Okay, so let's say that we were selling widgets, okay? Or do we want to sell whatever? We're selling widgets here. So Garrett, as we discussed, as a team, our focus is we sell the most complete widget to our clients. And I want to say a couple things. What you do really well, this is what you do really well, is that when we talk about numbers, you hit your numbers. And I greatly appreciate that. The company greatly appreciates that. However, one of the key things is, as a company, we have to have all parties, everybody on the same page. And without that, we don't have a company. We cannot have one lone dog. Now, you are very vital to this organization. But one of the key things that we have to do is that, we talk about three components: people who are going to be ideal team players, people who are what we call humble, hungry, and smart. I need you have that unbelievable work ethic. You have that ability to where you know how to work with people. I just need you to help me help you be able to get around and work better with people. So how can we do that more effectively?
I like it. I like that ideal team player, Patrick Lencioni right there.
Yeah.
And I think pairing that with also the Garrett, or you talking to me, Garrett, what are some of your goals for yourself within the organization? Where do you see yourself going? Because maybe would love to see you get to that point.
Yeah.
But the only way we're going to get to there is a team, not as being an all-star and everybody else just following you. We got to do this together. And if you're being a jerk to other team members or you're potentially impeding other people's progress, we're not going to get to the end results that we want to get to.
No, I think you're right. I think, ultimately it's ultimately helping them get better, because again, I want them to understand where their value is, where their significance is, but also I want to help them understand how they can even improve going forward. You're exactly right. And I think going forward with that conversation, we probably would say that you would be able to knock it out the park, but you've got to get people to follow you. No one's going to follow someone they don't like. I'm not saying people don't like you, but you got to get people to follow you. What can we do to help people to follow you? What do we need to do? Who are the people you follow? And I bring it back over to them. And I get really passionate when I'm talking about it. I start leaning in. I'm just like, what can we do to help you? I need you to be a part of this team. I want you. I want you to be successful. One of the things I learned, never let anyone stop you being successful. What can we do to stop you from not being successful, from being successful? You tell me, how can I help you? And I'll sit back and I'll just listen. I use a lot of body language when I'm doing this with an individual, but I want them to understand, and I put it back on them, because I've been in this position where I've had people just like, I'm the top guy, and actually I've been that jerk too, but I'm the top guy. You need me. And I never want to be in that position again. Now, at one point in time, I led an organization where we had a few hundred employees, and I had a production team said that we're not going to produce unless you give us X. And I thought, this isn't good. And so you never want to be in that position. Ultimately, what organizations have is that we're supposed to hold our employees accountable. However, what happens is that sometimes the employees start holding us accountable, and we are the ones that are being. So we have to make sure we level that. How do we level that? Is because we begin to understand why we're here: organization, mission, visions, and values. We really have to start. I really try to focus getting people back to that organization, because back to those focus, because that's why we're here. And if we're here for that, then hopefully the people on the team will be focused on accomplishing those values, organization, missions, and visions. So
very nice. Jason, Marina, any other final thoughts on this topic?
I think it was a great discussion. I have a lot of personal takeaways, just to refresher reminders for myself to also kind of revisit. So it's been a really great discussion. I appreciate it.
Very cool.
Yeah, likewise. Same here. Ken, I learned a lot from you. So I'm sitting here listening to you. So thank you for sharing all your stories, and learned a lot. And same with you, Marina. So thank you both. And Garrett, thank you for leading this wonderful pre-symposium event. So I'll just end with saying that, with leadership, you just gotta, keep your head up, and, keep on doing what you're doing. And, I just love that leading with gratitude. I'm always going to go back to that. I'm just going to end with that. Try as a leader, try your best to put yourself in the other person's shoes and really do express your gratitude and lead with gratitude. So
I love that. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Jason. The whole notion of it's so easy to judge ourselves on our intentions and others on our perceptions. If we can lead with gratitude and assess others, try to put ourselves in their shoes, we can better empathize perhaps with their situation. Well, everybody, Ken, Marina, Jason, this was a fantastic pre-symposium panel. If you're watching this and you're thinking, I want to meet these three great leaders, come to our executive symposium next week, December 7th, 5 to 8 p.m. We're hosting it at Devance Electronic Lifestyle in Carrollton. Would love to see you all there. I'll post a link on how to RSVP in the comments of this video. But thanks for your time, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you all next week.
Thank you, guys.